Have you noticed that most of your day is spent just replaying the same familiar patterns over and over again? For me, it looks like looking up the same YouTube search every single day. Whenever I feel bored, I'm a big fan of Magic the Gathering, which is this trading card game, this like fantasy trading card game. I've loved it since I was in middle school. And I'm still into it. And a couple times every single day, I'll just pull out my phone or go on YouTube and just search Magic the Gathering, just to watch some videos of people playing the game. It's really entertaining to watch. But it has kind of turned into a compulsive habit for me, where I just do it unconsciously all the time. Like even sometimes it gets really, really bad where I'll just spend the entire day just like in bed and just searching the same thing on my phone over, like refreshing the video feed to see if anyone has uploaded new videos so that I can entertain myself. I'll search it like 12 times. And I know for a fact that I'm not the only person who does this. I think every single human being on earth is discovering with the internet that we have a lot of the same cycles, the same patterns that we just replay on repeat over and over again. And often it causes us a lot of pain. This was honestly like the biggest struggle of my entire life. I'm 24 years old. I've read a lot of books. I've seen a lot of things in my life. But really, the biggest problem for me always has been this pattern of like reaching for familiar patterns, familiar feelings, whether it's watching porn or smoking weed or scrolling on the internet, just like searching for those things that make me feel comfortable, that kind of keep me in the same patterns that I developed when I was very young, when I was a child living at my parents' house. Whenever I felt uncomfortable, whenever I had an emotionally difficult challenge, like my parents are arguing or I had a bad day, whatever it is, I would always end up distracting myself, usually with some form of video games, some form of junk food. Sometimes it was sexual fantasy, even when I was very young. As I became a teenager, I started smoking weed. I found that was one of the things that I basically would just use to make me feel better. And I'm going to put air quotes around feel better. Because these habits that we develop that are designed to just kind of keep us in the familiar, to keep us safe and comfy and cozy, they don't really keep us safe and comfy and cozy, but actually they turn out to be pretty toxic. Not in a way where like you're a bad person or there's anything wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a beautiful, awesome, amazing, intelligent person. It's just that the pattern itself can kind of run amok and it can keep you stuck in the realm of familiarity. And then it's difficult to get any new results in your life. It's difficult to be free, to really authentically do what you want to do with your life, to have fun, to explore, to change things up, or even just to like sit and be peaceful. This is something that is robbed from you if you just kind of continually reach for the familiar thing. You just kind of constantly do this, which is why in this video I wanted to tell you a cool story that I think is going to bring some clarity and some light around this pattern of kind of staying stuck in your comfort zone and just, refreshing your feed 12 times like I would to try to like find something to distract me, but it just seems weird, and there's something wrong with it. This is what I found when I was 16 years old, and I was so addicted to video games and smoking weed and watching porn. It was just this chronic cycle, like a chronic cycle of like, that's all I would do is just play video. It was just like jumping from one piece of pleasure to the next piece of pleasure, to the next piece of pleasure through the entire day, from when I woke up and until I went to bed. And you would think that that would lead to a very pleasurable life, but actually it led to chronic suffering. You know, I was depressed, I hated myself, I had no confidence, I was angry all the time, frustrated, exhausted, burnt out, drained. And this is actually what caused me to discover personal development and meditation. And I read many books and listened to many teachers and went on retreats, and just like to kind of find myself, to figure out like, how do I stop this chronic pattern? And it's taken me a very long time, and I still haven't fully stopped it. But I have some more awareness of it, and that's why I wanted to tell you this really cool perspective that was just like in my head all day. And if I didn't make this video today, I'd feel really like I really didn't share something. So the thing that I wanted to share is what happens after you die. What? Bear with me here, okay? I'm not 100% sure what happens after you die, but the Buddhists claim to have some knowledge around this subject, and you know what? That's pretty believable. The Buddhists, many Buddhist masters spend thousands of hours exploring the internal realms, really observing and studying their own mind, their own consciousness, and this allows them to achieve enlightenment, to achieve awakening, to realize who and what they are, to realize who and what life is, how life works, how to be happy, how the mind works, how the mind kind of unconsciously clings to repetitive patterns that kind of makes it always feel like it's in a rush, always on a wheel of suffering. That's what the Buddhists discovered. So I think the Buddhists are pretty credible. Let's just humor the Buddhists, okay? Let's just pretend that what they're saying is true, and even if it's not, that's okay too. You can just take this as an analogy, all right? So I'm going to set my camera up here. Yeah. So according to the Buddhists, this is what happens after you die. I'm going to give you a very brief summary. So when you die, your mind becomes separated from your body. So the body disintegrates. It loses its livelihood, it loses its hydration, it loses the air, the warmth, all the four elements, the air, the liquid, even the earthly quality, they all kind of disintegrate. And just the mind is left over. You can imagine it like a soul. The Buddhists don't believe in a soul, but let's just imagine it's like your soul is kind of just floating in an in-between space that's like kind of in between life and death. It's called the bardo. Bardo. It means in between. That's literally what it translates to. So after the moment of death, you can imagine the soul, and again, technically I'm really not supposed to be using the word soul because Buddhists don't believe in a soul, but so when I say soul, I mean the mind that is not bound to a body. And trust me, this is going to be very relevant and practical to your life. Just hear me out. When the mind is not bound to a body, it kind of roams aimlessly in these bardo realms. And the way you navigate the bardos determines the causes and conditions of your next rebirth. So if you navigate the bardos in a skillful way, then that means you have a good chance of being born into a noble family where you can be taught the teachings of awakening, and you have a high chance of awakening in your next lifetime, which is seen to be the end of this perpetual chasing cycle of suffering and just grasping for familiar experiences. If you navigate the bardo in a skillful way, you have the chance to be reborn. But if you kind of goof, maybe because no one explained this to you, or because you weren't aware, or you just didn't know any better, if you kind of goof, you replay your familiar conditioning. You kind of reach for familiar patterns and things, and then this causes you a unfavorable rebirth with lots of suffering, like a hellish sort of realm, and you don't want that. Okay? So when you're in the bardo realm, there's different ways that it's described. One way that it's described is being extremely distracting. There's just constant distraction. Now, whatever conception of, life after death you have, just put that aside for now. This is just like, you just humor me for now, and then later at the end of the video, you can return to whatever your belief system is. I don't even know if I fully believe this. I'm just sharing it with you because it can be used as an analogy to really benefit your life. So one way that the bardos are described are as being extremely distracting. It's like every turn, there's something that's trying to grab your attention. Sometimes it's described as there's just aimless, like, manifestations, like wandering souls. There's some souls that are very tall and thin. There's other ones that are very short and stocky. There's some souls that have a horse's head. Some of them have a bull's head. Some of them have whips and chains and swords. Some of them are screaming and wailing and crying. Some of them are playing music of all different kinds of music. Some of them are cooking food. Some of them are lost. They don't know where to go. But it's definitely extremely distracting and also very scary. The soul that gets trapped into the bardo realms and you're there wandering, it's like it shocks you. It surprises you. You're like, where the fuck am I? What the fuck is this? What's going on? And the problem is you lose yourself. You kind of forget who you were. You just kind of you get kind of swept into the whole play of it. My girlfriend said something very similar happened to her when she hit a massive bong and she fainted. And she described a similar experience. And this is a similar thing that many different people who have near-death experiences or have passed out on hospital beds and come back, they describe similar things. There's usually light involved, which we'll talk about in a second. Check my camera's recording. So you get swept away. It's very easy to lose yourself, and many souls, or many minds without a body, react in a fearful way. It's scary. There's minotaurs with swords, and there's horrific, horrendous things that you see, horrible, terrible things that you see that are so scary that you want to find some refuge. Okay? And also, in addition to these terrible things, sometimes you find these little dim lights that are just kind of dimly shining, and they seem so comfortable and so safe and just so cozy. You just kind of want to go take shelter in one of these dim lights because what you're seeing is fucked. So one of these dim lights is you kind of can go take shelter in it. But the problem is, if you cozy up to this dim light and you kind of like grasp at it, then that's actually a tunnel. It turns into a tunnel that leads you down another birth canal into your next rebirth. And usually it's an unfavorable rebirth. It's seen to be a rebirth that's full of suffering, because you're acting out of fear and you failed to realize that all of the shit that you're seeing is actually the nature of your own mind. Okay? What does this mean? What does this mean? It means that when you're in the Bardo realms, it's kind of like a dream, where when you fail to recognize that the dream is made of your own mind, it's made of your own consciousness, it is your mind. Every form you see, even the people with horse heads, that's your mind. When you fail to recognize this, you take it to be real. So it scares you. And then you look for refuge, for suffering in something that feels familiar and safe. So you kind of dive to that dim light and you chase after to go kind of grab it and possess it. And then you get reborn into more suffering, because your same patterns are bearing fruit into more suffering. It seems cozy at first. That dim light seems cozy at first, but then when the seed kind of flowers and fruits, it ends up turning into suffering, and fear and greed and ignorance, etc. So then there's also a similar phenomenon that happens. There's like a scary version of the Bardos. There's also a very bright, luminous, beautiful, shining version of the Bardos. It's shining like so brightly that the light actually burns you, like it hurts your eyes to look at. The light's too bright. And there's forms, there's faces of all the enlightened masters, the Buddhas, there's all kinds of shapes and fractals and forms, and the light is too bright that it also scares you. It's too unfamiliar. You're not used to it. So again, there's another option to go look towards the dimmer lights. They're not as bright, they're not as blinding. You can go kind of dive into one of those dimmer lights and take refuge, take shelter. But again, the problem is that then leads to another rebirth of suffering. So in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's these beautiful prayers. And they're supposed to be read to somebody who has passed over into the Bardo realms. After somebody dies, the Buddhists believe that the mind is still around. They can still hear you. So they read these beautiful prayers and scriptures. What the prayers and scriptures do for the soul, or to the mind that has still passed over, to the person that is passed over, but they're still in the Bardos, but they're not sure what to do. They're kind of scared. Basically, the instructions are this. I don't have the actual scriptures memorized. I'm just going to paraphrase. But basically, they say, don't be afraid of the bright light. Realize that it is nothing more than the nature of your own mind. This bright shining light, although it might scare you, it actually is your own mind. It is the Buddha. That is the Buddha's mind. It's your mind. Don't go cozy up to those dim lights. The ones that are safe and familiar, that you're used to, that remind you of things that you remember from your old life. Don't go cozy up to those, because the fruits will mature into fruits of suffering. Just witness the bright light. Let it purify you and realize what it really is. Realize what it really is. It's your own consciousness. Okay? So what does this mean? Let me bring this down to earth now. Okay? So what is the true refuge? The true refuge, the thing that will actually, like, not cause you to relive endless cycles of suffering. Excuse me, guys, it's getting a bit dark out here. Wow, that's a bright light. Oh, it's too bright. No, I can't handle it. No, I gotta find some porn or something. Gotta get, whoop, down the tunnel. Yeah, so take this analogy on and realize that it's not only something that happens after you die, but really you can actually zoom out and really think, like, what's the difference between living and dying? You can learn more about this in a book I read recently. It's called Living is Dying by Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche, a Buddhist master. Where's the boundary between something that is living and between life and death? Because notice how life doesn't exist unless it's constantly changing and dying. Life is dying. Every second, every split second, you're dying. You're dying right now. Are you living or are you dying? So life and death are intertwined, and just think about what I was saying, like, maybe it's not something that only happens after you die. Maybe it's something that's always happening. Maybe life itself is a bardo. It's an in-between space. that from when you were born into a body to when you pass away and your body disappears, your whole life is a bardo. When you go to sleep at night, that's another kind of bardo. So the point is, when you're in the bardos, all kinds of fucked shit can happen. Crazy shit. You see all kinds of fucked stuff here in life. All kinds of shit. You won't believe it. The problem is when you forget what life is. You forget what it really is. You forget that life is actually your mind. The dream of life. You know, have you ever heard of, like, oh, the Matrix, escape the Matrix? Yeah, it's not about the Matrix as a computer simulation. It's about the Matrix is just you forgetting that all of life is you in the bardos that sometimes you forget that you're actually imagining the whole thing. You forget that life is made of your mind. Because look, let's just be very practical about this. Notice how everything you've ever experienced, everything you know to be true about Earth and about the planets and about physics and about science and about your friends and your family, everything you know, notice that this can't be known. Oh, my flash turned off, thank God. This can't be known unless it's known by your mind, in your experience. Your experience, oh my God, there's like this bright light in the middle of my eyes. Your experience is like this bright light that's just like kind of in the center of my vision because I was just staring into the flash. It's there, but it's only there in your own perception. Reality only exists as your consciousness all the time, forever, since the beginning of time. Every character you've ever dreamed is you. It's all of life is just this. It's your dream. So the point of this video is that this knowledge, this realization is the true refuge. This is like you facing the bright light and letting it burn you and realizing that it's the Buddha's mind, it's your mind. Or the scary Minotaur demons with swords. Instead of being scared of them, don't realize what they are. This is the nature of your mind, O child of Buddha nature, as they say in the scriptures. Don't be afraid. This is the most, one of, this sentence, don't be afraid, appears 700 times in the Bible. This is what they say in the Buddhist scriptures as well. Do not be afraid. Do not be awed. Don't chase after the illusions, but also don't be afraid of them either. Just kind of realize what they are. All right? So practically, let's bring this all the way down to earth. How does this help you with like this habit of chasing familiar experiences? So number one, it's just awareness of what I said. That's it. You don't have to like force yourself to like quit all your bad habits tomorrow. You actually don't need to force yourself to do anything. You don't even have to force yourself to meditate. None of this. All that's really required is right now you can actually just realize that you are alive and that you exist. That is the brightest light. That is the light that burns your eyes. It's like, oh my God, what the fuck? Life? Like, wow. Life is, wow. That's like, whoa. So just like, a good action step you can do is instead of, when you're sitting in your house and you're bored, instead of instantly reaching for your phone to like swipe something on social media, just wait 5 minutes. Just sit there and kind of just let the bright light of existence burn you. There's this sense of like referencelessness. Like, what the fuck is reality? Like, in between that space of like, oh my God, I'm bored and like I need to like search for something stimulating, you can just kind of like be in that space, abide in there a little bit, and just kind of like let it burn you. Because then you might start reflecting and thinking like, who am I? Like, what is my body? Like, what is this? What if Adam was right? What if my whole life is a bardo, an extremely distracting bardo, and all I'm doing is I just keep diving for these dim lights that then manifest me into other realms of even more suffering? What if the only way to stop that is to stop diving for the dim lights and just let the fucking brightest light burn you? The brightest light, what is that? That's just your own experience, the nature of your own experience right now. The fact that there is experience. What is experience? What is it? What's going on right now? Who are you? What is this? What's happening? So no, you're not just a person watching a YouTube video. That's a story. Right now, become conscious that I am made of your mind. Hello, I'm just helping you to remember this important truth. Right? So the bardos are very distracting, but there's also a lot of prayers that many people do, myself included sometimes, once in a while. I'd like to do a lot more, but there's many people all over the world doing prayers, praying that beings who are lost in the bardos, that they find their way into some favorable situation where they can hear the Dharma, they can hear the truth of what's real, the truth of awakening. So that's all that's happening right now. So here we go, you're welcome. And don't worry if you forget again, because, there's nowhere to go. It's just your mind. Like, you're fine. Everything's your mind. Even if you do forget about everything I just said, it's okay, because there's nothing bad that's ever going to happen to you, because it's all the Buddha's mind. Okay? This also means, like, hey, just as a disclaimer, don't hurt yourself or kill yourself or do anything stupid like that. That doesn't work, actually. If you try to kill yourself, it actually ends up reincarnating you into an even worse scenario. So you can't escape your life by that's you diving for a dim light. Again, if you think about it, killing yourself, what a stupid thing to do. Or hurting yourself, that comes from unconsciousness, not from consciousness. Real consciousness doesn't need to even do anything. You can just, this moment here is the nature of your mind, and that's it, okay? It's getting dark, guys. I hope this video was helpful for you. And yeah, I'll see you, I don't know, in the next lifetime or something, or who knows. Bye.